Hello, everybody. My name is Pedro Sanchez. I am a faculty member at the Food Systems Institute of the University of Florida, and also a professor of soil science. It's my duty to welcome you and introduce you to this very exciting new institute that has just been created. I would like to ask first to introduce Dr. Scott Angle, our newly minted Vice President for Agriculture and Natural Resources of our university. Dr. Angle is well known in the World Food Prize area. Before coming to Florida a couple of months ago, he was director of NIFA, the National Institute for Food and Agriculture of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Before that, he was president and CEO of the International Fertilizer Development Center, a center that is very well known in World Food Prize cycles, and has been already very involved in this week's proceedings. Before that, he was at the University of Georgia, and I won't take any more time, but it's a pleasure to have Dr. Angle with us, and I'll turn him over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro. I appreciate that, and I can't think of anyone better to introduce me at a World Food Prize event than a former World Food Prize laureate. So certainly as a soil scientist, I have admired your career and the accomplishments and the contributions that you have made. I want to thank you for what you have done for our great industry. I'm simply here to do one thing today, and that's to show my support for the new Food Systems Institute at the University of Florida. I think this is probably one of the most perfect places to develop something like this, and you're going to hear a lot about it over the next couple of minutes. University of Florida is one of the few organizations anywhere in the world that has law and medicine and engineering and agriculture and vet med all in one campus. So we really are a one-stop shop for all of the things that can fit into a Food Systems Institute. We have lots of departments that have become part of this. 12, the Center for African Studies, Emerging Pathogen Institute, College of Public Health and Health Professionals, and many, many more that are more traditionally focused on agriculture. This group has an excellent record of extramural funding, and as you're going to hear from Bola in just a few minutes, who I'll be introducing, we've merged two institutes, one of which supported a major USAID innovation project focusing on animal agriculture. This was also supported significantly by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And so it just brought together a lot of things all at one time, and we understood that we needed to connect these systems together, and we needed this institute to make that happen. The University of Florida is also just committed to become a world's leader in artificial intelligence, which I think that a lot of you understand will become an important tool for managing many of the problems that we faced over many decades. We've just been, we were gifted the fastest AI supercomputer in the world, or in academia at least. We'll be flipping the switch on that. Here in January, the university and state have committed to hiring 100 new faculty in artificial intelligence, a quarter of which will be in the agricultural area. And we're already starting to connect AI with agricultural problems and where AI can become a solution. So I'm really excited about how that is going to level the playing field for farmers all over the world. Now farmers in Africa and Asia and Latin America will have access to information and decision-making that today is only available to the largest and most well-funded farmers or corporations in the world. We also have strong collaborators in this partnership. We work with people in 100 universities worldwide. So we're really well connected to countries all over that are involved in food systems issues related to the production of food. And lastly, I just want to mention that we have a very strong leader of this new program. So he's good at fundraising. He's very culturally competent. He understands how to work in countries all over the world, and he's someone that people genuinely want to work with. So one of our greatest strengths of this new institute is that we have Bola as a leader. He's no stranger to grueling travel. He's a hard worker. He seems to be able to pick up on a dime and move to other countries and get things going there. So with that, I would like to introduce Bola to you. He's the new head of the Food System Institute. He has my full support, and when you hear from him, you'll see why we are so excited that he is in this leadership role. Bola?
Thank you very much for your kind words, Dr. Angle. I'm really excited, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you a little bit about this new institute of ours. This new institute was formed from two UF powerhouses, like Dr. Angle mentioned. The Institute of Sustainable Food Systems was formed in 2015 by recruiting faculty, real experts from all across the world to form this institute. And the Feed the Future Innovation Lab has a stellar complement of faculty that are managing 40 projects across the world. So we've been very privileged to bring these two teams together to form this new institute at a very strategic time in the life of our nation and the life of the world. Next one, please. One of the things that we're particularly proud about with this new institute is the capacity and the comprehensive outlook. So we have the capacity to work on local things, on food system issues here in Florida and across the US, and indeed across the world, as you will hear about in a few minutes. We have faculty who focus on biophysical sciences. We have social sciences, which really allows us to deploy in a comprehensive manner on food systems issues. And lastly, we have all the nutrient-rich foods as our focus area. So crops, livestock, seafood, all of these are areas of expertise within this Food Systems Institute. So I think you'll agree that we do have a comprehensive outlook. Now, our vision is to develop transformative and sustainable research-based solutions that enhance nutrition, health, livelihoods, and the environment globally through improved food systems. And we plan to do this using a three-pronged mission approach. Firstly, to conduct transdisciplinary research on critical food systems issues that is transformative and that pushes beyond the frontiers of current knowledge. Second, to develop transdisciplinary curricula and training for stakeholders across food systems. And finally, to translate science to stakeholders and to promote adoption of the improved practices and technologies that we and our colleagues develop. We have 4 thematic areas: global food and nutrition security, which is so much more critical with COVID, food production and distribution systems that were disrupted earlier in the pandemic, health economics, livelihoods and society, and then food production and the environment, 2 of the greatest pressing issues of our time. And we have a number of cross-cutting themes, ways in which we want to make sure that we deploy interdisciplinary efforts to tackle these food systems issues. Metrics and tools that would allow us to use a systems thinking approach. Inclusion and equity, and making sure that no vulnerable populations are left behind. Human and institutional capacity building to ensure that whatever we learn, we can train people to sustain beyond any short-term interventions. And then adapting and resilience to emerging issues. So whether these are new food trends or major disruptions, how do we adapt and ensure we have a resilient food system? And finally, enabling environment for food systems. How do we ensure that we have a conducive environment for the food system to thrive, to be safe, and to be resilient? Earlier this year, the Institute of Sustainable Food Systems organized the Future of Food Forum, and we're privileged to have Luis Fresco as our keynote speaker. And you'll find a link to that forum at that website, foodsystems.ifas.ufl.edu. And now I just want to invite some of our faculty to tell you about the excellent work they do in this space. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bola. My name is Greg Kiker. I'm with the Agricultural and Biological Engineering Department here at the University of Florida. It's my privilege to talk over a little bit of the modeling we're doing in food systems. And there are actually several modelers from many departments working on this, so I'm just giving an overview. Food systems are much more than simple yield prediction out of well-tended fields. Food systems are seen now, especially as complex climatic and socioeconomic drivers affecting that within a changing and adaptive world. And so the Food Systems Institute has really been exploring different types of tools to work with food systems in its entirety, from crop modeling and looking at yields and changing intensification strategies in a changing world, and working more human-based decisions in terms of pastoral agroecosystems in places like Ethiopia and Kenya. We're also working with platforms, network modeling in terms of plant disease transmission, animal trade networks, and international borders. And some of the newest exciting work is on circular economies. Next slide, please. I think we jumped one. So basically, okay, I'll work with this one. One of the most primary aspects that we're working with is trying to link and look at value chains. Different food systems are seen in different ways. From a business perspective, value chains can link production through distribution, through consumption, all dependent on technologies, price, investment. And there's also the idea of different production systems going into networks and being traded, collection borders, collection markets, trading into other markets. All these are affected by different future scenarios of different conditions, whether that's climate change, different shocks, policies and such. And so some of the most interesting scenarios we've been working with are looking at these what-if scenarios under adaptive policies. And one of the most critical factors as we link in with some of the other sectors in the FSI is to look at who wins and who loses from these systems. Who is most vulnerable? And I think one of the questions we've been asked again and again in our interactions internationally and locally is our food system resilient? Can it react, recover, and adapt to the shocks and changes that are coming? And I think some of these tools in modeling in food systems are a really exciting and challenging time. So that's my overview, and I'd like to move on. Oh, there's my other slide. It was out of order. I'll just move on. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Jim Anderson. I'm a resource economist at the University of Florida, and I want to talk a few words about seafood. Seafood, in fact, is one of the under-researched areas in the food system, but it's really dynamic. It's probably the most dynamic and changing sector around. It is the fastest growing food sector there is. It's also the most highly traded food sector there is. So, and also developing countries, and many developing countries, it's the primary source of animal protein, high quality animal protein for those people. We can see in that picture there, wild harvest, which now accounts for about 48% of global supply, has not improved much in recent years, matter of fact, for several decades. And in fact, the expectations are that it won't improve. The studies indicate the best it can do is increase 10 to 16%, even with perfect management. However, the future is about aquaculture. Aquaculture now accounts for 52% of supply. but it comes from a diverse set of people, all kinds of people from small scale aquaculture systems to super high-tech aquaculture systems. So this is one of the areas where we're emphasizing at the Food Systems Institute. Next slide. Well, this is a graph of aquaculture supply, over the last 50 years, in fact. And it's interesting to go back and look at IFPRI's prediction for 2020. Now, it's relatively straightforward to predict for 2020 for most agricultural products because it's a well-established research systems in place, and most of the sort of action occurs in the developing world. The developed world. Seafood, on the other side, and aquaculture in particular, is quite different. Most of the action, in fact, is in the developing world. Most of that is in Asia. And so when forecasts were done for 2020, we can see that IFPRI pretty much missed the mark. The actual aquaculture production is over 68% more than their forecast. And so you have to ask yourself why. And basically, the incredible amount of innovations in nutrition, genetics, technology, really were not characterized by their models. And so we really need to investigate into that. And what we're doing at the University of Florida, let me just mention a couple of projects we're involved with, is one, we're looking at new metrics, in particular, fishery and aquaculture performance indicators, which look at indicators of both economic, social, and ecological performance of this emerging industry. So it can be compared systematically worldwide. We're looking at international trade and markets for seafood products and how they compete with other food products and compete between farmed and wild fish. And we also have a major project looking at seafood waste to the value chain. How much nutrition is lost from fishing through the value chain to the final consumer, or from the fish farm in Vietnam through the final consumer. So we've got a lot of exciting projects going, and we're addressing an area which is very important. So thank you.
Thank you. This is Bola again. I'll just tell you a little bit about some of the things we need to consider about the future of the livestock sector. One of the big issues, of course, is the environmental impact of livestock systems. And we need to look at the scenario in developing countries versus in Western countries. So a US cow produces about 10,000 kilograms of milk. And that cow, to produce the same amount of milk, you'll need about 9 cows from India. Those cows will generate far more methane than that single US cow. So Western livestock systems are very highly productive. The emissions of greenhouse gases per unit of food product are low, but there are a number of concerns in relation to environmental pollution and health effects, inefficiency, and so on. So in most of the Western systems, there's relatively high levels of consumption of animal source foods, and there is little increase in demand projected till 2050. Now, we have a very contrasting situation in the developing world, where the systems are less productive. We have high emissions per unit of food, but these are highly valued systems contributing significantly to GDP. And in fact, they are indispensable for income, for providing manure, for traction, and also for women's empowerment. And what is really striking is that there are significant deficiencies in the levels of animal source foods that are consumed in the diets of the poor in low and middle income countries. Ironically, because of urbanization and increasing incomes and growing populations, there's a rapidly escalating demand for animal source foods. So we need to consider these factors as we approach 2050. And in the FSI, we're working on many of these. I will just now tell you about one project within the FSI, and that's the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. Feed the Future being the US government's Global Food Security and Hunger Initiative. And so we received funds from USAID and the Gates Foundation, and the rationale is that animal source foods are the best source of multiple bioavailable nutrients that can help to reduce undernutrition and the associated problems with cognition, growth, disease susceptibility, and so on. And so our vision is to sustainably improve livestock productivity and consumption in order to improve the health, the nutrition, the incomes, and the livelihoods of the vulnerable. And we're working in 8 countries, 2 in Asia and 6 in Africa, as you can see there. We have about 45 projects in different countries, and we focus on different food fork to field issues. Currently, we have trained, worked with about 12,000 people, developed about 43 innovations that are used by about 3,000 people across the world. And we're very fortunate USAID has just extended our program for another 5 years. So this is just one of the examples of the projects within FSI. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah McCune, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Environmental, Global Health, and African Studies. And I'm a social scientist. I work with the existing Livestock Systems Innovation Lab, as well as FSI. In FSI, I'm leading the Health Economics, Livelihood, and Society platform. I want to say a few words about the work that we're doing through this collaborative group on dietary diversity and nutrient-dense foods. As we all know, there have been grand improvements in food security internationally, globally, over the past few decades. But nutritional security has now risen to the fore because it's much of what remains insecure. And that is making sure that people have access to foods that collectively give them the nutrients that they need. Dietary diversity is an important indicator of this, so it gives us an idea of whether the diversity of food and the food system is coming into people's homes and is being consumed. We know that dietary diversity is generally low in low and middle income countries, but it's also generally low in resource poor areas. So here in the state of Florida, where we're a major producer of specialty crops, we know that most of those crops are actually exported. So as opposed to cereals and grains, when you look at strawberries and fruits and vegetables, we're a major producer of those, but they get exported. And so much of the state, particularly the poor and rural areas of Florida, remain with limited access to that dietary diversity that we need. So nutrient-dense foods play a really important role overall, but particularly when we look at what we might call vulnerable populations, that might be because of a health outcome that we're trying to prevent or mitigate, but also because of target populations. And this is particularly true when we start looking at pregnant and lactating women and infants and young children. So I want to tell you about one study in particular. This was funded through the Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems that we've conducted in Burkina Faso. So in Burkina Faso, we tested a behavior change communication strategy that was culturally tailored and leveraged leaders in the community to influence the behavior patterns of women and their feeding of eggs to young children. So fundamentally, we were trying to test a hypothesis about whether you needed to increase assets, therefore livestock, or whether education and really better understanding and motivation with cultural traction could sufficiently change behavior. This was an area, as you can see in the graph on the right, that had limited, if any, almost zero across the board egg consumption at baseline. And through this tailored project and working with an interdisciplinary team of social scientists, poultry scientists, we were able to catalyze egg consumption to over 6 eggs per week in children under 2. So they were recruited at 6 to 12 months. And even without chickens, we were able to increase it to 2.4, from about 0 to 2.4 eggs per week with just the with just the training module. So you can see the graph on the right, which represents those 3 groups of the intervention. The full got the chickens and training, partial got just training, and control got nothing. So we did this through increasing poultry production and through leveraging mechanisms for women's decision-making and power with the home. Fortunately, with this study, we were able to see significant reduction in both wasting and underweight, which are important metrics for overall nutrition and child health.
Hi, I'm Renata Serra. I'm faculty in the Center for African Studies at the University of Florida, and I lead the Enabling Environment Cross-Cutting Theme for the Food System Institute. Building on what we have been doing for the Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. But first, let me just say in a few words why an enabling environment is really key for creating an inclusive, sustainable, and equitable food system. And the reason is that it's set of regulation, laws, norms are needed in order to have actors play their part. In particular, this institutional environment, when enabling, create incentives for actors to produce, trade, and process food, create a system of rules that need to be respected, and so give a premium to respect of norms and penalization for deviations. And this is really a basis, for instance, for having incentive to produce, process, and trade food that is safe and high quality. It also needs to be inclusive. And so how they establish the rules for people to participate and have a voice, including the marginalized smallholders or other marginalized consumers. And finally, an enabling institutional environment creates the incentive for different institutions and actors and organizations to collaborate and to create the space for doing things in an innovative way, adopting new ways, and implementing improved rules and regulation and practices. Next, please. And how do we plan to do so? We want to work with actors in different contexts here in Florida, in the US, and all over the world in a number of ways. And these are some of the ways that we have experimented and proven to be successful in the Innovation Lab for Livestock Systems. So the pictures you've seen are for products already proven, so to speak. One thing, and the director of FSI, Bola, really emphasized, we want to produce research that is communicable, that can be translated in plain language to decision makers. We do so through policy briefs and other communication that digest difficult technical language into accessible one. We also keep a constant dialogue with our actors and stakeholders in country. We organize policy roundtable or other events in which we sit around the table and we brainstorm on priorities and things that matter to a different number of actors. We also want to understand together what are the bottlenecks and constraints to implement the recommendations that come from research. And we have done so through innovation platforms in all the African and Asian countries in which we have been working. And we have done not one innovation platform, but several. Also, we do reach out to the private sectors, in particular producer and consumer groups, through a variety of social media and including WhatsApp, phone messages, and the like. And finally, we co-organize with policymakers and actors in countries high-level meetings that touch on salient issues, like it was done in Ethiopia and in Rwanda, with a high-level aflatoxin meetings in which people could sit around and really speak about solutions to thorny issues. So these are really some of the things we plan to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your presentations describing different parts of this exciting Food Systems Institute. It is dynamic, it's multidisciplinary, it's ready to collaborate with other like institutes, and we feel very very excited and very honored to have this new institute in Florida. Now I'm going to ask, since our time has, that's enough, I'm going to ask people to send us questions, excuse me, for in the chat area so we could answer it. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.